All right. Hi, I'm Shivan Sarna. I'm the founder of Chronic Condition Rescue. I'm the founder of SIBO SOS, and I've done 11 summits on all kinds of topics, everything from the microbiome to the fascia, lymph, certainly SIBO and IBS multiple times. I've interviewed people from all over the world and all different kinds of conditions. Lots of things were wrong with me about 6-7 years ago, and therefore I went on a quest to get the answers. I was not coming from a place that no one knew what was wrong with me. I knew that there were people who could help me, and I went to find them. And then I made this vow within all of that, which was I will share what I learned. So here we are, 6-7 years later. I'm doing great. And one of my dear friends, and one of the first people I turned to, because I followed him online for so many years before I even had the lucky chance to meet him, is Stephen Wright. He is an engineer by trade. He is, I'm not even going to call him a health hacker, biohacker, because this doesn't give him credit at all. He is one of the brightest people I know when it comes to gut health and comes to research and finding out answers that are not mainstream. He has created his own supplement line that is very niche, very specialized, things that were not in the market that he wanted, and that he's vetted. And he's going to talk to us today about histamine and a couple of critical things that we all need to know. And if you have heard of like mast cell activation syndrome, MCAS, Mcast, and maybe you're already like down that rabbit hole, or you're just getting started because you have a lot of swelling, allergies, brain fog, I'm really glad you're here today. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand things over to Stephen Wright. Hello, sir.
Hey, Shivan, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. All right. So Stephen, can you help us? Do you have a presentation, or do you want to just let me ask you all my massive questions?
I didn't have a chance to do a presentation for today. I could share my screen maybe at some point, but otherwise there's no sexy slide deck.
You are certainly more than enough. Okay. So could you define for everyone at home what is like Mcast and what is histamine, and then sort of the constellation of issues that can come from having it be out of balance?
Yes, I think histamine is one of the most still underlooked aspects of gut health and overall health and healing. Like there's been a lot of amazing progress in the last 10 years in all different areas of healing chronic conditions. But I think histamine still hasn't quite had its full day in the light. And I happen to be somebody who was suffering with it, and it was in denial of it. I didn't want it to be a thing. And the more I've dove into it the last few years, the more it's just been, dang, there it is again. And there it is again. So let's just start with histamine. Like histamine is what? Well, I like to think of it as a hormone just because of the way it acts, but you could also, it's more like a neurotransmitter. And with hormones or neurotransmitters, what you want is you want just enough, not too much or not too little. Like if you have way too much dopamine, you get tics and you get mental health conditions. If you have way too low of dopamine, you also have issues. Julianne, are you having a hard time hearing me or Shivan? Because I do experience, Shivan, your audio a little low today.
Okay, I speak up. I'll scooch up and speak up.
Yeah. So anyways, so histamine, too little of it, and you will have disease, you will feel bad, and too much of it, you will have disease and you will feel bad. And so histamine's not the problem. Histamine's not a bad guy. You know, everybody who made estrogen into a bad guy over the last 2 decades, like shame on them. Estrogen's not a bad guy. Testosterone's not a bad guy. It's just like cortisol even. We need the proper amounts. And when it gets out of balance, or the equation, which we'll talk more about today, gets out of proportions, then it's easy to blame the one thing. And so I want to make sure we all grab our histamine and hug our histamine today. We're not an anti-histamine group, but we do need to understand how to work with your genetics, your lifestyle, and your sort of microbiome and what's happening inside your gut when it comes to histamine, so you can actually heal and get over whatever you're trying to, whether you're trying to reintroduce foods and just have a normal, life again, whether you're in the throes of a flare right now and you're trying to get out of that, you can barely, get through the day. I think there'll be something here for you, whatever state you're in today. So when we open up the histamine bucket, there's histamine intolerance and there's mast cell activation syndrome. And those are like the two ends of the spectrum, just like we have, like non-functioning autism on one end, and then we have, maybe high functioning Asperger's on the other end. It really is a range and a spectrum. But that being said, there are specific tests you can get done for mast cell activation. I am not a mast cell expert. You can just Google that, and there's a number of tests. They are hard to get. There's not a simple formula for this. It's more like a diagnosis of exclusion. If you have a number of factors, then they're like, okay, I think you meet the criteria for mast cell activation. And what that basically means in a nutshell is that mast cells are the primary way that histamine is released, and your mast cells are overreactive. They are hypervigilant to your everyday life. So when the pollen changes, when you change environments in houses and cars, when you eat different foods, your mast cells are too vigilant compared to a normal and healthy person. And so there's lots of things we can do, and that's actually part of the histamine equation. So we'll talk about that. And then the histamine intolerance folks are usually more classified as like you have a histamine breakdown issue. Like you're not able to break down as much histamine as a normal person would in response to food usually, but it's also in response to pollen and, again, everyday life. And so people who have histamine issues, it reads like a laundry list for almost everything. Like if you type these symptoms in, I'm sure Google's going to tell you cancer, but underneath cancer, then you'll start to be like, wait, do I have IBS or do I have histamine intolerance? Do I have fibromyalgia, or do I have histamine intolerance? And the answer is typically it's all connected, and it's like it's a connection. And so some people who have histamine issues, they have all your traditional allergy related things. They have stuffy nose, they have racing heart, they have flushness in the skin, they have other eczema and other sort of rashes and skin related things. They have breathing problems. Asthma is highly connected. They have fogginess in the brain and other sort of brain related issues. But a lot of other people just experience like gut related things. It could be diarrhea or constipation or just pain. And the cool thing and the crazy thing is that it's related to car sickness, motion sickness. It's related to fibromyalgia, ADHD. The list is everywhere almost. Not everywhere. Like I don't know that there's a bone connection, but maybe there is. Like there's all these crazy connections because histamine is it's a neurotransmitter basically, and it's going everywhere, signaling all over the place. And so it would make sense that based on your genetics, your lifestyle, your micronutrient status, your gut status, that you might have an issue in your skin and motion sickness. And I experience some stuffy nose and then I get all stuffy if I have like wine or beer. And so we're two different bodies, two different sets of health.
Do you think it causes irritability?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, okay.
Totally.
Just covering that. So the thing is that what you want to do is to help get it in balance. You don't want it to be underactive, right? Just like inflammation, if you're injured, you want it to be appropriate and to help you because it's rushing to that injury. So to, bring the right things to it and that kind of, and protect it. So Stephen, what can we do? Is this a diet thing? Is it, what can we do to help balance this out in all that you just were talking about? And guys and gals and people, could you please put your questions into the Q&A box for me? I'm by myself. I don't have an admin with me today. So if you could put it into the Q&A box, it would really help. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So there's like a state of health of your body. There's a genetic component to that. There's a mutation called AOC1, and there's 3 different variants of it, I believe. The studies are still kind of pouring out as to like which ones are the worst and how bad are they. My read of the research so far is like what you find is 75 to 80% of all the conditions in which histamine is highly correlated. And then an enzyme called diamine oxidase is used to help with those conditions, those folks display these genetic variants. And what's crazy about that is that's saying that 20 to 25% of people who could still have and still do say they suffer with histamine issues don't have the genes that say they're bad at breaking down histamine. And so I think that's really important and actually good. Like that's a good sign. And what it says is your genetics don't tether you to an outcome. There's a lot of lifestyle things that are working with you and against you. And so there's a whole list of drugs that if you are on prescription drugs, they are going to block your ability to break down histamine. So again, histamine's made every day. Every time actually you make stomach acid, histamine is one of the main signaling molecules to make stomach acid. So we don't want to get rid of our histamine. As you know, I've done like 15 years worth of shows on how important stomach acid is for you. And so I am pro stomach acid. I am pro the right amount of histamine for that reason. But we need to break it down properly. And there's two ways we break it down. Diamine oxidase is the main way. That happens in your gut and the tissues surrounding your gut. And then more in the central nervous system. So DAO can go peripherally, meaning like not central nervous system. And then in the central nervous system, it's methylene transferase, HNMT enzyme. And so DAO is the primary way, and DAO is a brush border enzyme, a small intestine brush border enzyme. And so if you're someone with SIBO, a condition which causes inflammation in your brush border, in your small intestine, it would be very easy to make the logical leap that you might have a DAO deficiency on a regular basis while you go through the SIBO phase of healing your body. And it doesn't matter if you have genetics or not, you could be deficient in that DAO. But if you're also taking certain blood pressure meds and other sort of meds, you can just Google a list of sort of histamine blocking meds or DAO blocking meds. It's a quite long list. Those meds plus alcohol plus inflammation in your small intestine. And it's very easy for you to end up in a state where you're making normal amount of histamine to food, to life, but you cannot break it down, and therefore you suffer. And so what you could do then is you could modify and remove things that are causing more histamine than others. And that includes things like fermented foods, alcohol, especially beer and wine and champagne. Anything fermented includes basically all cheese, all milk. It includes any sort of cured meats. And then some of the worst vegetables are avocados, tomatoes, and eggplant. And so you could go on a low histamine diet, but I think that it becomes a thing where you're, again, chasing your tail. You end up in scarcity when on a low histamine diet, just like you do on many of the low FODMAP diets or whatever, where you get hyper vigilant about what you're eating when it's all a scale. And if you just focus on the 20% of the foods that are the worst and just remove those, which also includes fish, which sucks, right? Like, so I've listed fish, avocados, tomatoes, these are like really healthy foods. But if you're someone who makes either too much histamine or the right amount of histamine, but does not break histamine down well, removing these foods while you figure out how to reduce your histamine bucket will provide you symptom relief. And then the goal will be, okay, how do we get our small intestine healthy enough to make enough DAO to just be a normal human? Because there's frankly nothing wrong with fermented foods and fish and avocados. Like, those are healthy foods.
Okay, so I hope you guys can hear me. Some of you can, some of you can't. I don't want to really scream at my computer, but I am kind of frustrated with it because I haven't done anything differently. So sorry about the volume on my part. No, Sharon, I know you're not asking questions. We just usually don't chat during the presentation, and you may have come in late and didn't hear me make that request, just because there's a lot of people with brain fog here and they can't resist the urge to look in the chat. So I get it. Please put any comments, questions, or concerns that you have in the Q&A box so Stephen can address them when we're done with this part of the conversation. And actually, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions that are in the Q&A already, if I may. Can histamine intolerance be related to the food sensitivities? And when we remove all the foods we are sensitive, will the histamine reduce, which you just addressed?
Yeah, so food sensitivities and histamine related issues are to completely, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like trying to tease them apart can literally make you go mad. And that's where I'm just over this whole exclusion of everything, exclusion of all histamine foods, exclusion of all FODMAPs, exclusion of all salicylates, exclusion of all whatever. Like it's just a never ending exclusion scarcity mindset. And the truth is there are an 80-20 principle you could apply. You could remove the foods that are the worst offenders, and that should provide you some symptom relief. What is not talked about, and part of what my platform is about, is that just because you remove them does not mean healing happens. It does not mean when you go to add them back in.
Can't hear me. I hope you heard that. Just because you remove them does not mean that healing happens. That's so important, Stephen. I just want to take a beat and really think about that, because we get so frustrated. We've done the elimination diet. We've removed all of these things, and I'm not better, right? Because there's still things that need to happen. And I see this all the time with SIBO, where I fixed my diet. I did a low fermentation diet. My SIBO's not better. That's because you still need to, in that case, reduce the overgrowth. So that's a super, super important nuance to use as a filter for your thinking. Like all these webinars I do, all these summits that I do, I'm really trying to get everyone to take this knowledge and apply it to their thinking, right? So you can use these as filters for the future. So Stephen, what percentage of DAO might be considered deficient, or does it even work like that? Like, and then maybe about the differences in DAO, if you would.
So if you're not in the US, if you're in the UK, there's some like at-home DAO testing kits you can get. In the US, it's extremely hard still. I have not found an option that I can use. I mean, if I had it, I'd be spending way too much money just playing around trying to figure it out. So right now, DAO levels in your blood fluctuate very often. And so they're trying to figure out how reliable of a test is this, and how do we use it appropriately in the research studies. And so there's no way to say like, oh, I'm operating at 100% DAO capacity, or I'm at 50% DAO capacity. You just kind of have to like look around you. Do you have seasonal allergies? Do you have breathing and asthma related issues? Do you have skin issues? Do you have food sensitivities? Do you have unexplained tachycardia or other motion sickness related things? Do you have focusing problems, irritability, and ADHD? If you start to tick off some of these boxes, and then you go and you're like, all right, I'm gonna play with this. Go have cook some fish, eat some sauerkraut, and have tomatoes with it. And if you feel terrible, then you're having a problem breaking down histamine. And so you could potentially be helped from a DAO supplement. And or in the time being, you might want to avoid some of those high histamine foods. And what we'll get to is like, we want to repair the small intestine, right? We want to repair the capacity to clear histamine in the body. And we also want to stop the mast cells from being overreactive. Like we want them to be, there's no way to test like how overreactive or how vigilant are my mast cells. There's not a test for that yet. They're kind of, again, sandwiched together. And so if you can do things like quercetin, which is a mast cell stabilizer, or luteolin or curcumin or resveratrol, these are all mast cell stabilizers, and they can help be like a weighted blanket or a hug for your mast cells. Tributyrin X is also one of my favorite mast cell stabilizers. And so we can use these in combination to give our mast cells a hug, let them know they don't have to be so vigilant. And then we can also take things like DAO to reduce or increase the breakdown of histamine. And then you can focus on, how do we get here in the first place? Do you still have an active SIBO infection? Do you have a SIFO infection? Do you have mold? What do you have? And so that's kind of the game we end up playing, so that you can, again, adopt, like you can reintroduce those foods rather than just doing the exclusion diet and then being, misled by, I think, well-meaning doctors and influencers and experts that somehow you're going to magically heal all that stuff I just talked about.
So, Rosalind, thanks for asking, what is DAO? Let's connect the dots, because you said the big name and then we started calling it DAO. So thanks for helping us with that, Rosalind.
So diamine oxidase, it's a brush border enzyme made in your small intestine. And it's made in those little villi. You've heard about the little villi. So like, for instance, if you have celiac disease, you probably for sure have a DAO deficiency just because your inflammation levels in your small intestine are super high. And so the shorthand for that's DAO. And we can talk about why certain people have already said in the chat that they've tried DAO and it didn't work, because that was my experience for 10 years as well, and why I have not talked about this topic until the last year.
Okay. The other thing I hope you can hear me. The other thing I just want to mention is being red, RED. So that is also a sign that I have noticed consistently for people who have mast cell activation syndrome and histamines. If you have a little bug bite, right, it gets red. Those are like histamines coming in to help. And
right.
My husband and I went to breakfast actually with Dr. Tom O'Brien once. He was in Florida for a conference. We went and met him. He's so nice. And somehow we started talking about David's health. And bless Dr. Tom, he was like, well, you are very red. And like, David and I looked at each other because we had never really made that observation. But indeed, David was quite red, and it wasn't from a sunburn. So, and also think about what happens when you burn and you turn red. These are the histamines trying to help, right? So that's another thing. If you're like, I'm not sure, do you feel like you're kind of have that redness to yourself, to your skin? Okay.
Yeah. Another one is headaches and migraines. So, my wife, Shay, has had headaches on and off, and bless her, I try to experiment on her as often as I can with all types of substances that I'm excited about. She doesn't love that as much as I do. But I was like, look, I have researched this. There's so much literature on migraines and DAO deficiency. Just try this DAO product and let's see if you get less this whole month. And she's like, all right, probably not going to work. Anyways, she is now she's like a true believer. She's like, wow, this stuff actually, where's my DAO? We're going to dinner. Where's my DAO?
Well, I know. Okay, Jim, take care. Sorry to lose you. Steve's saying the important stuff today as usual. But I want to say that it's so unusual to have something, if you are really sick, to have something actually work quickly. Because I know a lot of us, like, we take the month to see if get down to the bottom of the pill barrel, and we get frustrated, or we just think it's never going to get better. But so Shay has such a quick experience. Okay, let's talk about why you haven't started talking about DAO until the last year, and what makes yours different. And I did put the information about how to order in the chat, but I have to add the link, and there is a discount for you if you're interested. Okay.
Yeah, so DAO is not a new concept. I mean, this idea of DAO deficiency and DAO supplements have been on the market for over 10 years. All my attempts to use them, as well as the people that I worked with one-on-one for many years, it was just hit or miss. Like, the research all said these products should work, but in practice, the products just did not reliably work. And for the people that they worked for, they were taking 6 to 10 capsules per meal. And, that's just, you have to have a lot of money to take that many. And so I just didn't talk about it. And, since we've had the supplement company, I've been at every show I go to, everywhere I comb the internet. If I find a new DAO enzyme manufacturer, I'm always like very excited, because I was hoping to solve this issue. And that's what happened 2 years ago. Is I ran into a company from Spain. These Spanish researchers had been studying DAO for nearly a decade, and they swore that they had a different extraction process than the other companies, a proprietary one, and that they had also figured out an enteric coating. And so this got my attention, and I did the same thing I do every single time, which is I get super jazzed. I buy a bunch of product, and then I make my team, and usually my wife, try it and see if anybody notices anything. And in this case, it was like black and white. Like, people were switching from their other DAO supplements. People who did not have good experiences in the past, DAOs, started loving this product. And I actually started noticing it as well. And so what they have that no one else has is they figured out a few things. Number one is DAO is destroyed by oxygen very quickly. And so if your DAO comes in a bottle, we put not every company and not every product is like this, but any product that is capable of being destroyed by oxygen, they'll put oxygen absorbers in the bottle so that it lasts the full 2 years or whatever it needs to last. As soon as you crack that cap, though, the oxygen is going to come in, and that oxygen absorber is going to stop working. It only has a defined amount of capacity that can absorb. And so then the DAO starts getting reduced pretty quickly. And so I think there's other well-meaning companies out there with the wrong packaging. If you see our product, they're in a blister pack. They're little tablets in a blister, these little blister packs like this. And so each one of these is nitrogen packed, and it's fresh until the moment you actually open it. The other thing that they were able to do is actually coat these in an enteric coating. And enteric coating means it's completely protected from stomach acid. And so again, the DAO enzyme is supposed to work in your small intestine. That's where a lot of the histamine action is happening. And there's other companies with acid resistant delivery technology. But again, those companies just didn't work for me. They didn't work for the people I work with, the people on my team many people on our team are mast cell activation people. And so this company out of Spain, we were able to work with them, get our own packaging, get our own product. And that's where that's why I'm talking about it. That's why I'm very excited about it, because it's actually a product that's an improvement over the other stuff that's been out there.
What if I can't swallow supplements but must open the capsule? Or it's a tablet.
It's like a mini tablet. It's like the smallest thing you ever seen. Some people actually are really mad because they're so small, which is, you make a capsule. I try to put as many milligrams in a capsule. People get pissed at me because they're like, it's a horse pill. Then I make a really small one and they're like, I lose them on the counter. And I'm like, I can't win.
Okay. Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
But
does DAO heal the gut lining?
I mean, in a roundabout way, it's going to be additive to your entire healing experience. So if you're making too much histamine and not breaking it down, as Shivan said, histamine is part of the swelling response. It's part of the inflammation response. And so if you're causing extra inflammation on a daily basis, on a regular basis, that's going to impede healing, right? So if we can reduce that and get your body into proper histamine balance, everything's going to speed up. All your healing, your daily experience is going to work better. But in and of itself, it's not like the gut healing product, if you will.
Can you hear me any better? I switched the mic. I don't know. Okay.
No.
How do you dose DAO?
So, this product, I can only speak for our company. The studies that they've done on humans, they've done some on gut reduction. So like gut pain, constipation, diarrhea complaints, things like that. A lot of those people just take one tablet per meal. If you're someone with fibromyalgia, the fibromyalgia studies are 3 pills 3 times a day. And then the migraine studies are 4 of the tabs. And so for instance, we have some practitioners who are using the product. They work with headache and migraine people. And what they tell them is take 2 every day, with or without food. And then if you feel a headache coming on, take 4 immediately, to try to basically knock it off. And so again, it's very dependent on your own level of DAO production, your own level of histamine production. You kind of have to just play around. Not everybody takes more than 2 a day, but some people need to.
Okay. Is it now? How is it?
Oh,
is
yeah,
it better?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. I'm having inflammatory reactions to dying intestinal parasitic worms. Would your DAO product be helpful for this circumstance? Priscilla has Mcast.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, if you're having histamine symptoms of any type, I would try it. I would try it immediately. Again, play with the dose. 2 is the minimum dose per day, but you could go as high as 4 or 6 a day, or 8 even, just to play around and figure out what your dose is. I would say, again, that's only half the equation, right? The DAO supplementation is part of the equation. The other part is mast cell stabilizing compounds like tributyrin, curcumin, resveratrol, luteolin, quercetin. So if you have other supplements on that side, that's when the magic starts to happen, is when you come at it from multiple angles.
Right. Okay. Susan, you're saying, can you take DAO along with rigatoni? That's a pasta, so I'm not sure if that's what you mean. But yes, you could. Could you put it on a swollen bug bite?
I mean, I don't think it's gonna hurt you, but no one's told me about that yet. So I guess if you do it and it works, let me know. We do have people who get attacked by mosquitoes and they get those giant welts. Like those people that get the giant welts from mosquitoes, like you have a histamine issue. You're making too much histamine. And so we do have people that use it when they go to Florida on vacation or whatever, and they're just getting, carried away by mosquitoes.
Does low histamine cause overmethylation? I think Janet feels that it does for her.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
That's not my area of expertise, so I'm not going to really give much of an answer on that. Anything's possible, though.
Can dizziness, have you ever heard of dizziness being related?
100%. Yep. Dizziness,
Yep.
motion sickness, especially if you also have pulse ox or something, make sure with, dizziness, make sure you're checking your pulse ox as well as your blood pressure.
Okay. Can you, this is not tributyrin. Can you hold up the pack again? So go talk, Steve, so the camera goes to you, at least on my.
So the
end.
the Histamine Harmony box is 60 little tablets inside this little box. And then, Tributyrin X is the little gel cap. So different products. Not everybody needs both. This is like fast acting for histamine related things. Like I personally take it anytime I'm having wine or beer. I'm really into those non-alcoholic athletic brew company. But if I have more than one, I have histamine issues. So yeah.
Okay. So do you take it DAO only with histamine meals or 2 daily, no matter what you eat?
So again, you have to play around with it. The researchers and the studies are taking it with meals. 10, 20 minutes before a meal. I think there's a lot of us who, because part of the histamine load is actually having dysbiotic bacteria in your gut. So if you have inflammation and you have dysbiosis, your gut bugs will be making their own histamine, whether or not you eat a high histamine or a low histamine diet or whatever you do, whether it's springtime or fall time or whatever, your gut bugs are the wrong mixture and they're making histamine themselves. And so there's this concept of a histamine bucket, kind of like an inflammation bucket, where if you're always at capacity for your histamine and just, a little bit of a bloom of the grasses or an interaction with a cat or a car ride, and then boom, you're overflowing with your histamine, you're irritable, you got a headache, you're feeling red, things like that. So in those cases with those individuals, we've found as a company that just taking them without food also has a impact, but you have to play with it because we've also had plenty of customers write in and say that was a waste of my time. I feel so much better when I take it with food.
Oh, okay. Can children take it?
Children over 2 can play with it. They got to be able to swallow. It is a really mini tablet, and you're not supposed to crush it because it does kind of break apart the enteric coating.
Okay, so don't chew it, basically.
Correct.
That's crushing it. Okay. Just for the record, I don't know if so I did put the link if you all are interested in picking some up. It is different. And I've had a lot of conversations with people about DAO over the years, and it definitely is, I'm going to say brand specific. People have really experienced in the past, before Stephen had this creation, that like when I would talk to practitioners, they're like, whatever you do, use this kind. And so it really does seem to make a huge difference. So I'm just putting the link in there in the chat. And the coupon code is SIBO SOS to save 15%. Plus, if it's over $125, you have free shipping in the USA. He does ship overseas. There is shipping for that. Okay, so the dose for children, did you already say that?
It hasn't been specifically tested in a ton of children, right. So you can't break it apart. So I would just, be an adult, work with a practitioner. If you don't feel comfortable, work with your pediatrician, but it's going to be one.
Okay.
One.
one of the little pills. Go ahead and
Yeah.
bring the questions over to the Q&A, if you would, please. I'd really appreciate it. Could GIrd that isn't resolved be any of the usual remedies? Oh, that's not resolved by any of the usual remedies, be a histamine problem?
In isolation, probably not. But if you start to take a stock of your skin tone, your brain, your headaches, all these different things, and, you have seasonal allergies, you start to add up a bunch of symptoms, there could be a histamine connection. But if GIrd is not solved by, betaine HCl, low stomach acid stuff, and it's not solved by acid suppressing medications, you need to go in for an endoscopy.
Okay, right. And nothing we're talking about is a substitution for your doctor's visit or your practitioner. And, we're just giving you some information here. Okay. Can DAO enzyme cause constipation? I gave it to my son who has ADHD and he became constipated, 1 to 2 pills. Have you heard of that before, Stephen?
No, not with our product. I mean, anything's possible though,
Mhm.
for sure. So
Okay.
as I mentioned, histamine production, excess histamine production is related to too fast of bowel movements and too slow of bowel movements. So in
Okay.
his body, it could have been a brand specific thing. If it was our product, then obviously just write us and we'll get you your money back. But yeah, that's where this stuff is so
Sorry.
confusing, where you can just go
Yeah.
crazy chasing your tail.
Does decaf coffee block DAO production? I know caffeine can block it, but wondering about Swiss water decaf. Also, any major DAO blocking foods to avoid. Right. So is there a difference between a DAO blocking food and a high histamine food?
Yeah. So alcohol, number one, is inflammatory to the small intestinal lining, so that breaks down DAO production, but also it starts to block some of the other enzymes related to DAO production. So alcohol is the worst offending quote unquote food. And then other things like anything with vinegar, so apple cider vinegar, any fermented foods, kombuchas, things like that are going to be super high histamine. Anything that uses yeast, champagne, wine, beer, those are going to cause a lot more histamine. If you're splitting hairs between decaf coffee and regular coffee, again, I would not put my focus there. I don't know if decaf coffee is particularly bad. I've never seen it listed on any study as a bad thing to avoid. I think this is, again, where I'm trying to move people away from that kind of thinking towards there's got to be other ways you can optimize your body and just love up on your decaf coffee.
Review again dosing for DAO. I'm taking ketotifen and sodium cromolyn. Do you think I also need Mcast supplementation in addition besides the medication? So he's not your doctor, and those are prescriptions. So he's just going to make a comment.
Yeah. So clearly you're deep down the rabbit hole and you're working with a provider who knows a lot about histamine and Mcast. And my answer is 100% yes. They work in combination. Mast cell stabilizers, like I said, your quercetins, your tributerins, and then your DAO supplementation can work in conjunction with those medications because most those aren't necessarily antihistamines, but anyways, yes, play around with it, be an adult.
Okay. Meaning that use your confidence in your intuition, of course. Patrice, histamine intolerance expert, gave me Enzymes by Loomis Pan, even though I told her I can never take enzymes without stomach pain, which is exactly what happened. Her response was, in 20 years of practice, I was the first. Can you recommend an enzyme for a sensitive person like me? Well, as a matter of fact, Patrice, yes, he can. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, you're not alone, Patrice. I've been doing this 15 years and this is not a common thing, but hundreds of people. Yes. So you can try Holozyme and we can see if it matters brand to brand. But if you've already tried several brands of enzymes, then what we're really dealing with here is a mucosal membrane problem. Your mucosal membranes are pretty shot. And so any sort of introduction of probably a protease enzyme is going to aggravate you slightly. Now, there are a number of ways that I've heard practitioners deal with this. One is that they support your mucosal membranes and then they tell you to go down to a sprinkle and you just sprinkle and you sprinkle and you sprinkle until you can tolerate more. Other people will pull you off the enzyme and put you on a whole host of, trying to heal your mucosal membranes, which includes things like checking your hormones, your estrogen levels, your progesterone levels. It includes things like tributyrin for your gut, maybe some mega mucosa or something like that helps with your mucosal healing as well from microbiome labs. So things like that.
So should we focus on healing the gut first to see if that resolves the histamine DAO issue? Why not water the lawn? Like help it out. Do it at the same time. Heal your gut, and this should also help. People are asking about the order. Do we treat SIBO first before starting? Guys, this is like sunshine and water. You can do them all at the same time. I get your
nothing's
question.
competitive.
Understand it.
Yeah, I totally get it. You don't want to waste time. You don't want to waste money. You want the most efficacious and straight line path to feeling better. Totally get it. And nothing here competes with anything else. It's all additory, or it's all additive. Yeah. Meaning that, again, I said, if you have too much histamine in your gut, you're going to cause too much inflammation. Again, too much histamine, it's redness, it's swelling, it's big bug bites, it's tachycardia, it's all these different bad things. That makes it much harder for your immune system to be healthy and eliminate SIBO, SIFO, whatever the heck you got going on, mold, whatever detox protocol. So anything you do to bring your body into homeostasis while you handle these other real causes, the better you're going to feel today, tomorrow, the next few months, but also the faster you're going to heal completely. So this idea that there's like an order of operations, I think I would say in this case, bring it in right away. It's kind of like how I think about enzymes and butyrate and things like that. Like the focus on detox and the focus on killing is misguided, because how are you going to confirm or be ready for when you don't have the killing support anymore? If you're just like, oh, I stopped dropping the bombs, now what happens? Well, what's going to happen is life is going to grow into what it was before the bombs came. So if you were easy to colonize and you got SIBO or you got SIFO or you got a parasite or something, and you don't change the everyday environment inside of your body, you're just setting up the conditions to get reinfected. You have to change the environment while you're doing the killing and then after the killing is over. And so not everybody needs Histo Harmony. Not everybody has a histamine issue. But for those people who do have low-grade issues or these symptoms I'm talking about, you will speed up your healing. You will just enjoy your life more, which means, guess what? You'll move more. You'll go outside more. You'll have less stress. All these things improve DAO production. They improve your nervous system function. They will improve your detox. They will improve your killing capacity, your immune status, just by being more social. Right? Like if we have, like, right. I know if my gut is a wreck, if I don't feel good in my head, if I'm dizzy, I am not going to say yes to a social event. Well, we all know that. Yeah. Pickleball. Are you a pickleball champ now?
My husband and I took a pickleball lesson.
Okay.
It's at our local community center. We were like such good citizens. We got there at 6. It started to rain at 7:22, and I thank the good Lord, because I was like, it was great. I loved it, but it was like a lot for me to process. And I haven't played a racquetball sport in 30 years. So it was a trip. We were hobbling a little the next day, I won't lie to you, but it was fun. But I was grateful for the rain. Anyway, yeah. Hi, how does histamine affect the brain and anxiety, etc.? I don't get allergic reactions, but I do have deficient DAO genes.
So there's 4 different types of histamine receptors inside the body. They're H1 through H4. And the main brain related ones, I believe, are H4s. And again, the majority of the histamine breakdown inside your brain, your nervous system, is going to come from the histamine methyltransferase enzyme. There's not a supplement or a drug for that yet. You can look at some of the micronutrients that are involved in the creation of it. But what we are seeing is okay, so what I just said is I'm repeating science, right? I'm not the researcher. I'm not dissecting rats. I'm not doing studies on humans. I'm repeating what the researchers write in the studies. Mm-hmm. That being said, how is it that they're running studies on humans with ADHD and other brain-related things and getting symptom suppression and symptom improvement? There's got to be a feedback mechanism up into the brain that is related to DAO supplementation and histamine circulation in general. And so for anybody who's just curious, like, is this related to my anxiety? Is this related to my, my mind that won't stop racing? All I can say is just try it and try the dosages. And if it doesn't work, at least with our company, you can write us and get your money back. So but it's not a direct linkage. I wish it was as simple. If there was, it would be a drug, right? It would be a pharmaceutical option.
Right. Okay. Can high histamines trigger an osteoarthritis flare?
Maybe.
So maybe. So one thing I do want to mention that Dr. Ann Hill, who works with us a lot at SIBO SOS, she's done a lot of master classes with us on Mcast, and she did say to me last year that she has noticed that Mcast patients, I don't know how she knows this, but she's brilliant, had an issue with their fibroblasts in their bones. And she saw that most of her Mcast patients had osteopenia or osteoarthritis. That's all I'm going to say, because I'm just, again, repeating something that I heard from a really smart person. So just FYI. Okay, Susan's saying, I've been using it and it's been amazing for me. Cannot recommend this product highly enough. Thank you so much, Susan, for that.
Yeah, thanks, Susan.
Are histamine involved with lactose intolerance? A friend in her late 70s all of a sudden has an allergy to tomatoes. I didn't consider histamine as a contributing factor.
Not in the way you think. You're asking brilliant questions. So this is the beautiful thing about,
so smart.
Yeah, you're asking the right questions. So think about what is the same between DAO and histamine issues and lactose intolerance. They're both brush border enzymes. They're both small intestinal brush border enzymes. So DAO will not fix a lactose issue, but if you have a lactose issue, you're probably very close to or are already having a histamine issue, because that means something's going wrong inside your brush border. And so in this case, if the person is having a tomato issue, they may be having other issues, and you could try it, but it won't fix the lactose thing.
And Patrice just came into the Q&A box. Stephen, for clarity, would Histo Harmony help with mucosal membrane issues?
It's not going to
I
be
think
a
he
direct
already
healer.
answered that. Yeah, we answered this earlier. Like Omega Mucosa from Microbiome Labs is more of like a direct, but this is like fertilizer, sunshine, rain. It makes all the grass grow.
Yeah, I would take Tributyl Nex and Mega Mucosa if you're dealing with a mucosal issue.
And you can get that 15% off on the Tributyl Nex, but the same link, you can go and see everything. Just keep clicking around and you'll find it. For someone with severe food and environmental allergies, which of your products, in addition to DAO, would you ideally recommend?
Again, if you're someone who cannot tolerate any supplements at all, my late friend Beth OHaras had a nervous system course, and she did a lot of, I think, really good work for the mast cell and histamine community on saying, like, look, if you cannot tolerate regular things, curcumin, fish oil, quercetin, things like this, your nervous system is where you need to repattern first. And so if you're past that, if you can do supplements, I would say Tributyl Nex is one of the best things, but I would also make sure you're taking mast cell stabilizing compounds that I've mentioned, quercetin, curcumin, resveratrol, those types of things.
Okay, so that specific histamine protocol, Peter, that you're asking about, at least a list of suggested support supplements, you've been mentioning a list of the foods to avoid. Actually, go to Beth OHaras' site, what is it?
Mastcell360.com.
Mastcell360.com. For those of you who have followed her work for years, she's brilliant being that really helps so many thousands of people. She did recently pass away, and I'm sure that they would appreciate the family would appreciate any support you can share on the site, or picking up one of the courses or something like that. I do not know anything else. That's all I know. Okay, do you have so that's what I'm going to tell you about that, Peter. She's got phenomenal stuff there. Barbara, I understand that interstitial cystitis can be related to histamine issues. IC is mast cell, I believe. Would that indicate a histamine issue is mast cell, or is that too simplistic? Or Stephen, is it like the sun is shining, so it's a weather report. Like they're
Well, they're definitely related,
related.
but interstitial cystitis can also it can be a whole different ballgame of infections inside the bladder wall and some other things. Um, so again, highly related, probably comorbidities, meaning they coexist oftentimes in similar bodies. But we'll probably need two different protocols. Um, Man, I wish I could remember this lady's name. Ruth.
No, I got it. I got it. Microgen DX. You want to go and find that test, and it's living UTI free. And it's like, it's not Ruth Chris, but it's something like that. But
Okay.
live UTI free or something like that. And they have gone down, like what Dr. Allison Seebecker is to SIBO, they are to interstitial cystitis. So, and the Microgen DX is a lab that will test for a whole host of things that your typical urologist does not test for. Typical UTI doesn't test for. I'm doing a menopause summit next year, and I'm hoping to get some speakers from there because they really have the bladder health in great shape. So I hope that helps you. It's Ruth. I
Ruth
just saw it the
Chris.
other
Yeah,
day. Ruth.
she's a we've done some calls together. She's an awesome woman. She's like 90 and she's doing like Olympic weightlifting and pulling
Oh,
like
really?
225-pound deadlift. She's a cool woman.
Can you
She's
hook me up with her for the menopause
yeah,
summit? Because
yeah.
I really want to talk to her.
Send me a
Okay.
link. I'll get you.
Okay, I appreciate it. Okay. Okay, he mentioned food as a fish to avoid, but just mentioned fish oil is helpful.
Yeah, so um
Breathe.
we all have to eat. Food is not just nutritional, like micronutrients and macronutrients, it's emotions, it's feelings, it's society, it's connections. Food is much more than just how inflammatory is it? Is it right for my gut or not right for my histamine or whatever? Um, if you are in a phase of your life where you're like, I eat food, I have reactions, I have to go lay down on the couch, I have tachycardia, I have flushing, you should understand your body's relationship to the foods you're consuming. And in this case, you would want to be very intentional, eat some fish and see how you feel. We can all, I think, agree that if we were stacking foods on a list of most nutritional, least inflammatory, best idea for you, without context for the human body and the human that's going to absorb it or eat it or digest it, fish would be at the top of it's awesome. Like it's awesome. But when we bring it into the context of someone's emotions, their body, their health status, for some people, fish will derail the rest of their day. It will give them a migraine. It will put them on the couch with tachycardia. And you need to figure that out for yourself. This idea that one food is bad or one food is good is just bullshit. And it also should change as you heal. So in the phase of mast cell activation and histamine intolerance, fish might be off the table for you. Fermented foods will be off the table for you. But as you use mast cell stabilizers, as you use DAO, as you work on your nervous system, as you fix your butyrate levels, as you maybe find mold or some sort of infection and you get rid of them, you should be able to reintroduce those very valuable and highly nutritious foods because there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that right now for you, it is not an option. So this idea that there's a black and white list of histamine foods or IBS foods or fermentable foods, they're characteristics, but don't just believe them. Otherwise, you'll be like a ton of people on my email list. And this has happened since I've actually started in 2010. People come to me when they can only eat 3 foods, 5 foods, 7 foods. You do not want to get there because the way out of that is very hard and it's very long. And so this idea of just, I'm going to overlay that with the low histamine diet, and then I'm going to cut out all those foods. That will lead you in the direction of 7 foods, 5 foods, and digging out of that hole is something that I help people with. I do specialize in that, unfortunately, but I would like to prevent people from ending up there because it's much easier to get well if you never get there.
Right. So, if you're just like on this bell curve of just getting started with this, dealing with elimination diets and on enzymes and all of this, and you read the advice and you hear the advice, like to do these limiting things, and you haven't limited anything ever before, it sounds like a really good idea. And in some cases, certain amounts of it are a good idea. If you
100%.
shouldn't, 100%. So then when you're on the other side of the bell curve, you're in it 3-4 years and you're still doing super limited diet, it and the hypervigilance has taken over and you're not well yet, right? And you're like in that state of hopelessness and your microbiome hasn't been diversified in years. This is what Stephen is talking about. It's like, where are you in all of it? Using your common sense, following your intuition, being patient and testing, not overeating that food that you know is like really not great for you, using it as like tests. I mean, it's a practice. It really is. It's a very, very big practice. And it takes a lot of time, energy. I mean, I've always said having SIBO is like having a part-time job because, you know, but it doesn't have to be. And that's what we're here for, is to make it easier and to learn from everything we've gone through. And yes, Stephen and I have been super hyper vigilant before. So that's why we're sensitive to it, because we know that hell that it can be. Okay. All right. What about gluten? Yes, Dr. Tom O'Brien, and he's going to tell you that people who eat gluten have a higher probability of dying. So that is his research and experience and his like drop the mic moment. So, and you go to other countries and they have a different kind of gluten. People go to Europe, they do so much better. They can eat bread. What do you say about that, Stephen? Oh, we only have about 4 more minutes, so I'll whip through some more of these questions.
Look, gluten is fucking delicious. Let's just say it. Let's call it what it is. It's in everything. It's ubiquitous. And I started being gluten-free in 2009, way before all this. And it was so hard. And I was so concerned about every microscopic amount of it. And you should understand what gluten is. You should understand where it comes from, what foods it's in. You know, wheat, barley, and rye. Gluten is not in oats. Gluten is not in corn. These are different types of proteins that can be hard for some people to break down, but you should understand what it is. And I would say in general, if health is your number one or number two value, I would expect you to come to the conclusion after you read Dr. Tom's research, after you read the actual research out there, that you're going to mostly avoid gluten for the rest of your life. That's just the best answer. But do I do that? No, you're dang right that if I go out to a restaurant and I'm with my family, like I was just back in Michigan, where gluten is still somehow not made it into the lexicon there, they don't know what it is, I'm going to take extra precautions. I take like 6 whole enzymes and I prepare for the gluten that I'm going to be exposed to, and I minimize the reaction to it. Right. Because there are options on how to be, again, food is not just toxins and nutrients and chemicals, it's feelings, it's socialness, it's emotions. And in that case, it's healthier for me to have a little gluten, have a pizza with a ton of whole enzymes and HCl and other products, and be not the guy who's like, do we have to go to that restaurant? But knowing that there's no other restaurant to go to. It's not like there's actually a good option. There's all bad options. And I just don't want to burden my family with that, because I did that for years. I didn't participate in Thanksgiving. I didn't participate in Christmas. I made my own everything. And I don't know that I was healthier for it, frankly.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, I needed to make a what, Susan, very, very rarely do we ever cuss in these, so he just had a moment. What is your source of DAO, animal or vegetable?
It is from pork. It is animal.
Okay.
The vegetable ones, I don't advise any of the vegetable versions on the market.
Okay.
For a number of reasons.
If you are going to do this, just simply read the packet, because on the back of the packet will have dosage information and when to use it and all of that. And then also Stephen has a remarkable Facebook group. Once you have purchased things from him, you get a link to, you don't have to do it. It's just an option for you. You can get into the Facebook group where he has coaches and they do help you with specific questions within the group. Now, what I didn't talk about earlier, it is 4 p.m. Eastern time. I do need to wrap this up. And I want to say thank you all so much for coming. Would you put some love into the chat for Steven? Because he really, as you know, preaches his heart and soul and
I
educates
get a
us so
little
much.
I get a little tuned
It's a
up,
little,
so
well, it's all good.
it's
It's all
hopefully
good.
it's hopefully just from love. So whether you're just starting and you do need to do a elimination diet, or you're, you know, you're 6 months into that and it's time for you to start to do an abundance diet. Yeah.
An abundance diet. I like that. Don't leave yet, because you know, when I don't have the help, I tend to get too focused on the other things. So hold on. If you all just have already made a purchase today from Steven through our link, then we have a bonus for you. If you send your proof of purchase, you have to do this. You can't just write us and say, yeah, I bought something, because people were starting to abuse it. But it's info@SIBOSOS.com. And if you order anything from Steven with our link between now and 5 p.m. Eastern time, please email us at info@SIBOSOS.com. And this will be worth it for you, because we have a bonus for you. Let me find it. And it is, stand by. Let me see if I can pull this off. There you go. It is, ooh, this is a good one. This is a good one. It was part of a summit that I did, and it is what is mast cell activation syndrome, with Heidi Turner, who really specializes in this as a registered dietitian. It was a brilliant conversation, and I think it will be super, super helpful for you. So be sure to order within the next hour. Email us at info@SIBOSOS with your proof of purchase, and we will give you the link to that. There you go. I'm going to do info@SIBOSOS again. info@SIBOSOS.com again. Okay. Steven, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Shivan. Thank you, everybody, for the love of the chat. I appreciate y'all. I do love the 4-letter word that starts with an F, but I understand other people don't.
Yeah, you know, so that's all good. That's all good. It hardly ever happens.
The goal with our products, the goal with our company is, you all have complex bodies. I have no idea your medical history. We are not your doctors. And I would get so mad when I would get hopeful about a product, buy it, and not get support around dosing it. And I didn't know at the time that maybe I needed to double or triple the dose or take half the dose. And then even after I did that, they wouldn't give me my money back. And I was left wondering, you know, what did I do wrong? And also, there goes another $50. There goes another $80. There goes another $100. Yeah. And so at Healthy Gut, we have US-based certified licensed health coaches. They have all kinds of other certifications. And they're there, they're on the phones. You can have anybody who buys a product gets a free one-on-one session to educate you about that product or the products you bought. We have the Facebook group, which is 3,000 plus people who are hyper active and trying to help each other with these issues. And then at the end of the day, if it just doesn't work, you know, minus shipping and handling, we're going to give you your money back, because we want you to get well. We want you to take that money and go apply it somewhere else.
And what's the window of time for that? We're not talking about a year later. We're talking about in like within 30 days.
60 days. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
we hope generous.
We hope you try it.
Do get this home and don't let it go into your supplement graveyard. Actually try it, because it is so effective for so many people. And I know what that's like. You get it, you just let it sit there. Don't do that. Try it. So if you do need your money back, you can get it back, and you're not like dealing with that deadline and all that. And plus, we want you to be well. That's the whole point. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. It's so good to have you here. I'm sorry, we just had like 3 or 4 questions I couldn't get to today, but we thank you very, very much for being here, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you all. Enjoy.